To my video on evaluating expressions for a variable using order of operations. So in the past, you had learned that the first step of order of operations is parentheses. But you'll notice I've replaced it with grouping because there's more than just parentheses in 8th grade math here. So grouping is the first step. So we're looking for any grouping symbols. And that would include brackets. And these are what brackets look like. I've put them around the word. We have parentheses. We have square root. Absolute value. And finally, fraction bar. Now, what I mean by fraction bar is when you have more than something to do on the top and the bottom. For example, this is not considered a fraction bar as far as grouping. This would be a fraction bar for just plain division. And you'll see on the back page when we do an example what I mean by fraction bar as far as grouping. So let's look at our first grouping symbol, and you see brackets here, so we need to follow order of operations in the brackets, which is add or subtract from left to right. So I'm going to do the 7 minus 9, and 7 minus 9 is negative 2, plus 1, and I'm going to close the brackets, minus 3 squared plus 6 divided by negative 2. Now, negative 2 plus 1, it's still in brackets, so I need to figure that out. And negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. So I'm going to come down here and put negative 1 minus 3 squared plus 6 divided by negative 2. And I'm not sure why I put this. This does not need to be there. Once I get it down to one number, the brackets can go away, so I'm left with negative 1. Okay, now our second step, after we take care of all the grouping, is exponents. So here's an example of the symbol. We have y to the x, and we're going to label the y as the base. And the x would represent the exponent. So let's look here, and we see an exponent here, so 3 squared is 9. So I'm going to put 9 in this box here, bring down the negative 1 minus 9 plus 6 divided by negative 2. Now I've taken care of all the exponents, so now that brings us to our third step, which is multiply or divide. And remember, this is from left to right. So that means multiplication doesn't always come first. That means if you see multiplication first from left to right, you do multiplication first. If you see division first from left to right, do division first. And so here's some of the symbols you might see. You might see a dot for multiplication. You might see 2 letters or 2 numbers in parentheses. And you might see a number or letter outside the parentheses and a number or letter inside the parentheses. So that's also multiplication. For division, you could see the division symbol like this. Very rare that you would see that. If you're going to see division, you're more than likely going to see it as a fraction bar. And if we continue our example here, this is considered a fraction bar. And I don't see any multiplication. So I'm going to do this division here. So 6 divided by 2 is -3. Bring down your -1 minus 9 plus -3. Okay, so we've taken care of all multiplication and division. That leaves addition or subtraction, which is our fourth step from left to right. So that means if you see addition first from left to right, do addition first. If you see subtraction first from left to right, do subtraction. Okay, and your symbols would be an addition symbol or subtraction symbol. And we're going to go from left to right, so we're going to do subtraction. -1 minus 9 is -10 plus -3. And finally, we're going to do the addition, so -10 plus -3 is -13. And we can circle that. That is my final answer. So we're going to go over some of the key concepts and also point out the difference between some exponents you might see. So the blank blank square root is like parentheses, work inside out first. And then the fraction bar is like parentheses, simplify the top, then the bottom. And if you have more than one set of grouping symbols, work from the inside out. Okay, so look at these two examples, and we have a squared when a equals -6. So I'm going to take out the a and put -6. I'm going to put it in parentheses because we want to square whatever a is. And a is -6 squared, so this means -6 times -6, which equals 36. Okay, now let's look at this. This looks very similar. Now we have -a squared when a equals 6, so we're going to replace the a with a 6. So now look, this negative is not directly attached to the 6, so we're going to do exponents first. So we're going to do 6 squared, and 6 squared is 36. And then we multiply by the negative that's in front. So this is actually -36. So notice the difference. Here we were squaring a negative, and here we're squaring a positive and then multiplying it by -1. Therefore, it ends up negative. Now let's look at the examples on the back. So turn the page. And we see number 1. We have if x equals 3. So we're going to circle x equals 3, and we're going to take out all the x's and put a 3. So 3 to the 4th power minus 9 squared. Close your absolute value plus 5. Now we're looking for grouping. I see an absolute value symbol, so I'm going to do what's inside the absolute value symbol first. And we have two exponents, so we can do them both at the same time. So we're going to do 3 to the 4th power is 81. Make sure you put in your absolute value symbol. Minus 9 squared is also 81. Close your absolute value plus 5. The 81 minus 81 is 0. Bring down your plus 5. And the absolute value of 0, of course, is 0. Plus 5, and 0 plus 5 is 5. And circle your answer. Number 2, a equals 5, so I'm going to circle it. I'm going to take out the a and put a 5. 15 divided by 5 minus absolute value of 5 minus 6. Now, this is not considered fraction bar as far as grouping, but this is because this is absolute value. So 5 minus 6 is -1. Leave the absolute value symbol until you actually take the absolute value of it. Now I'm ready to take the absolute value of -1, which is 1. Okay, I don't have any exponents. Multiplication or division from left to right, I have division here, so 15 divided by 5 is 3. And 3 minus 1 is 2. Okay, let's look at number 3. Now this is considered fraction bar because I have operation to do on the top and an operation to do on the bottom. So as long as I have either something to do on the top or the bottom or both, it's considered fraction bar grouping. So x equals 8 and y equals negative 5. So we're going to write 4 squared minus 8 minus 2, close your parentheses, divided by negative 7 minus negative 5 in parentheses. Okay, now I'm going to come down here and do the top first, so we'll just use t for top. And I'm going to copy down what's on top, so 4 squared minus 8 minus 2 in parentheses. So we're going to do grouping first, which is the 8 minus 2, which is 6. Bring down 4 squared minus 6. I did my grouping, so now I look for exponents. 4 squared is 16. Bring down the minus 6. And 16 minus 6 is 10. So the top is 10. Now, the bottom, and come over here and do bottom, is negative 7 minus negative 5. There's only one step here. We just have to do negative 7 minus negative 5, which is negative 2. So I'm going to put that on the bottom of the fraction. And 10 divided by negative 2 is negative 5. Now this one comes out to be an integer. If it didn't come out to be an integer, then all I would need to do is simplify my fraction. And then I would be done. So if it doesn't come out to be an integer, you can just leave it as a fraction and just simplify it. Okay, because some of them that we do might turn out to be a long, non-repeating decimal, so we would just leave it in fraction form. Or even if it did end up as repeating, we could still leave it in fraction form. Okay, let's look at number 4. Okay, we're doing the square root when a equals negative 6 and b equals 8. So we're going to do the square root of negative 6. I'm going to put it in parentheses because it's a negative, and we're raising it to an exponent, plus 8 squared. Notice I didn't put this one in parentheses because it wasn't negative. And I'm going to put plus 7 outside of the square root. Okay, I can do both of these at the same time. So negative 6 squared, remember, is negative 6 times negative 6, which is 36, plus 8 squared, which is 64. Put the square root symbol back over the top, plus 7. 36 plus 64 is 100. Whoops. Plus 7. And the square root of 100 is 10. Plus 7, and 10 plus 7 is 17. Okay, number 5. We have 5. And remember, number in front of letter means to multiply, so we can put a dot here. I'm going to use parentheses because we're raising a negative number to an exponent. Plus 2. And absolute value of negative 3. Now, I put 2 negatives because I have a negative in front of a, and then a is also negative, and we'll look at what happens there. Okay, so we look for grouping, and the grouping here is the absolute value. So negative times a negative is a positive, so we're going to change that to positive 3. Absolute value symbol is still there because I have yet to take the absolute value. And so I still have grouping here, so it is a 3. Now, there's a 2 in front, so that will mean that I'm multiplying the absolute value of 3 by 2. So we're going to write 2 times 3 minus 9 divided by 3. Okay, now the next part is exponents. So negative 3 squared is 9. So 5 times 9 plus 2 times 3 minus 9 divided by 3. I'm going to multiply or divide from left to right. So 5 times 9 is 45, plus 2 times 3 minus 9 divided by 3. And going from left to right still, I have 2 times 3, which is 6, minus 9 divided by 3. And finally, I have division here. 9 divided by 3 is 3, so 45 plus 6 minus 3. 45 plus 6 is 51 minus 3, and 51 minus 3 is finally 48. That was a long one, a lot of steps. This is an 8 here. I know it doesn't look like an 8. There we go. So 48. Now, we can also do word problems with this. In this next example, I gave you a formula, and then I gave you what the symbols represented. So the surface area of a cone can be found by using the formula. Pi r squared plus pi rl, where r is the radius of the cone and l is the slant height of the cone. It says, what is the surface area of a cone? Now, yours might say pyramid, so if yours says pyramid, cross it out and put cone. If r equals 5 inches, l equals 12 inches, and pi equals 3.14. So we're going to write this down as pi is 3.14 times the radius, which is 5, squared, plus pi, which is 3.14, times the radius, which is 5, times the length, which is 12. Now, you'll notice this often happens in surface area problems where I have multiplication in two different groups separated by an addition sign. So we have one group here and one group here. Whoops. But before I do this left group, I notice I have exponents here. So we're going to do 5 squared first, which is 25, plus 3.14 times 5 times 12. Now, since I have all multiplication on this side and all multiplication on this side, I can do it in two groups. So we'll do this one first, then we'll do this one. So 3.14 times 25 is 78 and 5/10. Don't forget to bring the plus sign down. And 3.14 times 5 times 12 is 188 and 4/10. And finally, I need to add those together to get 266 and 9/10 inches. And the label for surface area is always square. Okay, that concludes our notes on evaluating expressions for a variable using order of operations. I hope you have a great day.